This is SoapBox Radio.
Potting it out there.
Potting it out there with my lime boots. The Lifestyle Edit.
Hey guys, it's Ryan. It's a Thursday afternoon. It's just gone 4 o'clock and we are coming to you live from the studio. Well, I'm coming to you live from the studio today in Melville in Joburg at 27 Boxes and looking forward to a great show. Welcome to SoapBox Radio, and today we tackle an issue which I believe requires our thought and attention, not only in Cape Town but around the whole of South Africa. This is definitely a show in which I want to hear your thoughts and comments as we go, and I look forward to engaging with you as well as my guests over the next half hour. Thank you to all for your feedback on last week's show with Satanda Upliftment Projects as we explored the amazing work being done by the guys to bring early childhood development education to underprivileged areas. I hope you've been in contact with Satanda to positively impact upon your local community. Back to today's show, let's turn our minds to a topic which was recently raised to national imperative status, the Cape Town water crisis.
Yo, what's up?
Baby, let's go!
Great. So Cape Town is the first major city facing the threat of running out of water, and as a result the world is watching closely to see how the situation is being dealt with. According to National Geographic and BBC News, other cities who could face a similar crisis include London, Miami, Beijing, Istanbul, Mexico City and Cairo. But the water crisis has also come with its fair share of drama, which has been unfolding predominantly on social media over the last few months here in South Africa. Depending on who you talk to, the crisis is the fault of global warming, the local and or national government, drought, overpopulation, various individual political leaders, and according to an evangelist, Angus Buchan, the morally bankrupt people of Cape Town. Naughty, naughty Cape Town, be wrapped over the knuckles. I put a post together on Facebook recently which seriously questioned this approach by dear old Uncle Angus. In today's show, I'm hoping to get down to brass tacks, to understand from less an emotive point of view, but rather approach the Cape Town water crisis from a practical, what can we do now approach. The more we argue with each other, the less we actually come together to address this rather critical issue. I'm joined today by 3 guests all the way from Cape Town, and they join me via Skype. And I think we're still waiting for one guest to join us on Skype, so we're going to carry on with the other 2 so long. All 3 of these ladies are actively involved in the tourism business and responsible tourism at that. My first guest is Di Brown, editor and content creator behind the Roaming Giraffe brand, and definitely no stranger to SoapBox Radio. My second guest is Louise de Waal, the face behind the social platforms Green Girls in Africa, a self-confessed African nut and passionate sustainable tourism and conservation champion. And my third guest is Heidi van der Walt, founder of Better Tourism Africa, a platform which aims to create better places for people to live and in better places for people to visit. Intro's done, let's jump straight into today's discussion. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
There we go.
Yes,
So
all right.
we got Louise and we got Di on the phone. We don't have Heidi yet. Okay, we're going to keep trying Heidi, and we will believe that she will be joining us shortly. Di, let's start with you. You have a rather interesting take on the water crisis, which you believe is actually not a crisis, Di?
Exactly, Ryan. I'm very happy to be on my soapbox, on your soapbox
Wonderful.
today, because I get really irritated by this hashtag water crisis, because honestly, at the most, it's an inconvenience.
Yeah.
50 litres a day is not a crisis. We need to get over ourselves and stop moaning about it and just start doing. I blame social media and the media because every national event in the world has to have a hashtag these days, and we got stuck with water crisis.
Yeah.
But I really think the media has been pretty disingenuous in a lot of the reporting.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't think it's a crisis. I think we need to rethink the way we look at water for the future, like ongoing. So this is not a temporary situation that we're in.
Sure.
But in my opinion, it ain't no crisis.
Okay. Just to clarify for those who may not be aware, when you say 50 litres, that's level 6B water restrictions.
That's right, yes.
And that applies-
And it's 50 litres per person per day, no
per
matter
person.
where you are. So it's not just in your home.
Yeah.
So it's wherever you are in the day, your total must not exceed 50 litres. And 50 litres is quite a lot if you've come down from 100 litres and then to 87 and then to 50. So the people that are complaining are the ones that just thought the water restrictions didn't apply to them until suddenly everybody started talking about day 0, another hashtag that annoys me intensely because it's so dramatic and everything's been put a little bit out of proportion.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we are very inconvenienced, but we're not in a crisis.
Okay, I think it's important to draw that distinction because the crisis just automatically just puts you in a bad frame of mind. It puts you in a frame of mind of wanting to box with each other and point fingers in. Because we're in a crisis, it must be someone's fault, and it must be the mayor, and it must be national government, and national government's not talking to a provincial government, and we actually just avoid the issue completely. Oh, there's Heidi. Hello, Heidi. Heidi? And she dropped again. Okay. Heidi made a very brief appearance on the show. Okay. Anyway, we'll keep trying to get Heidi back shortly. We're going to talk... Is that Heidi again? Heidi?
Yep.
Ah, there. Welcome. Welcome to SoapBox Radio. How are you?
Very well, and yourself, Ryan?
Good, well, thank you. Sorry, we started without you, so we've already done the introductions, and Da's already given us some first thoughts on why it's not a crisis, and we'll engage you in conversation shortly. Louise, 3 years of drought in the Western Cape, together with a rather large increase in the local population, have contributed to the current state of affairs to some extent. Talk to me more about this and share your thoughts on the Cape Town water crisis.
Yes, no, absolutely, Ryan, and I also agree with Di's sentiments. We have become very reliant on water, but when we just sort of look at the events of the last 10, 15 years, it's something that I suppose could have been predicted.
Yeah.
Cape Town's annual rainfall is around 520 millimetres a year, with obviously most of our rain occurring in the winter, and for the last 3 years we've really experienced severe droughts. Just over 300, just over 200 in the last year, only 154 millimetres, which is virtually 20% of our normal rate.
Sure, crazy.
At the same time, the population has grown dramatically, sort of an increase of 40% in 50 years, which puts huge pressure on our resources, and in particular water. And we've all taken water for granted without considering it to be a precious resource. And yeah, we rely heavily on 6 major dams for water storage. 55% of that water supplies the city of Cape Town, but we sometimes forget that nearly 40% of that water also goes to agriculture in the Western Cape. So quite a large percentage of our dam water has to go into agriculture as well. So yeah, we have sort of become too reliant on our dams for water storage, and we've only started looking at alternatives now. And obviously, people have to start thinking about their personal use. So yeah, it's not really a crisis. It's an adaptation.
Yeah. Okay. It really, I think, as part of the campaign to increase awareness, it really has to be done at a personal level. I know I travelled backwards and forwards to Cape Town during the year last year, and when I was there in September last year, I knew the water crisis, or the water issue was on. And when I got to the venue I was staying at, and they had this beautiful pond in the front and this bridge over it, and I couldn't understand why the pond was empty. I thought, what bad management is happening here? And then only to realise that it was the water issue which has caused them not to refill the pond. And the jacuzzis that were on offer at the venue. You know, as a person coming from Joburg, I wasn't that aware of what it actually meant day to day. So, I think the awareness needs to be taken place at that level, that people can really identify with the need. Would you agree with that, Louise?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is where, when I say we've taken water so for granted, we just take it for granted that we have all this water, we can do whatever we like, we can have swimming pools, we can have ponds, we have water as features rather than as a resource. To use. That is for an important part of our livelihoods, and I think it's rethinking the way we see water and the way we use water.
Very true, very true. Just checking that Heidi's still there. Heidi? There you go. Okay. Great. Okay. So Heidi, there's been much hysteria and misinformation around the issue. Share your thoughts on the Cape Town water crisis and how such misinformation has possibly delayed the timely implementation of water conservation efforts.
Well, I think, Ryan, what is really surprising to me is the fact that people were caught so unaware and then started spreading this misinformation. the fact is that South Africa and the Western Cape has been a water scarce area, water scarce for a long time. It's been known historically that it's a dry, relatively dry climate. So I'm a little bit perturbed by the fact that people were claiming not to have known that there is a problem developing. So maybe there could have been better management of information flow, but that certainly didn't help the fact that people were acting as if there was no tomorrow, literally, and just simply abusing a very scarce resource.
Do you think?
So, and then obviously, when people make claims that it is a political ploy, that is also surprising to me, because there is clear evidence in the photographs of how dry the dams are, and it further sets people's minds at ease that we don't have to behave differently. The other issue is that we have been talking to the tourism industry for, I think, since 2009. The tourism industry collectively decided that water is an issue that everyone needs to work on. But sadly, not all tourism businesses have been. Some have been proactive, but others have really only come on board when it was a crisis. And kind of it didn't apply to me, or it cost a whole lot of money in order to make changes, whereas a lot of it is operational change that is required. And again, tourism businesses talk amongst each other, and they psych each other up in a negative manner, in a way, about how incredibly expensive it is to install rainwater tanks or greywater systems, whereas by simple actions like staff training and a better control for management, water could be saved, and obviously guest participation as well. And I know Di is going to talk at length about this, but specifically the tourism industry has known for a long time that there is an issue developing, and it is a priority for action, both from the city council and also just generally in terms of corporate, the responsible corporate citizenship and not abusing scarce resources.
Okay, Di, Heidi raises a valid point in terms of tourism. Cape Town is most certainly not closed for tourism. Talk to me about this whole approach, Di.
Okay, well, firstly, we definitely need the tourists still to come, and we need to reassure them that they're not going to be queuing for 5 hours to get their 50 litres of water, which is definitely not the case. Further to what Heidi was saying, I'd like to do a big shout out to the V&A waterfront. CEO David Green was telling me that they started looking at the whole water issue as far back as 2010, and since then they have reduced their water consumption by 53%, which is a lot, considering that they use 2.3 million litres a day. They have got a long-term program where there will be, so there's already a desalination plant on the V&A waterfront property, which is being managed. It's a temporary one, which is being managed by the city of Cape Town. But the waterfront will have their own one, purely for everything in the waterfront, online by early next year. And that will provide them with 2 million litres of their daily allowance, leaving a very, very small shortfall that they will need to get off the local grid. And I think this is very good forward thinking, and they really deserve a shout out for that. There are 12 hotels within this complex that will then be pretty much off the grid, which means that the tourists, there'll be no impact. But even now, as we speak, those 12 hotels at the waterfront, they don't have the thing that the tourists seem to hate the most, which is don't flush every time you use the loo. That's not an issue at the waterfront, because since 2010 they have got a borehole and greywater system that sorts out all the irrigation, and it also does all the toilet flushing and everything, so there's no need for anything there. But they have also been very proactive in things like managing the water pressure, reducing it where need be, putting in shower heads that are economical, and just generally with their whole education and looking at the long term. I think that is the key thing. People mustn't just be going, okay, for now, until we get the rains in winter, we're going to do this, and then we go back to normal. The going back to normal
is not an option.
Can't happen. You have to get a new normal, which maybe won't be as stringent as it is now, but our new normal needs to be very different to what it was 4 years ago.
Okay, all right. So definitely something can be done, and there are ways and means of doing it where the planning is in place. It's very encouraging to hear what the V&A Waterfront and Big Business is doing. Guys, be sure to send us your questions and comments either on my Twitter account or on my Facebook blog Facebook page. You'll see we're doing a live stream of the show as we go along. I'll be back shortly with my panel of guests as we continue our discussion around the Cape Town water crisis.
This is SoapBox Radio.
Potting it out there.
Potting it out there with My Lime Boots. The Lifestyle Edit. Share your thoughts and be part of the show now.
Send a message on Twitter or Facebook
at My Lime Boots.
Find My Lime Boots on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
At My Lime Boots. And on YouTube.
At My Lime Boots Live.
I'm back chatting this afternoon to Louise and Heidi, all responsible tourism champions, about the Cape Town water crisis. Heidi, let's talk about Day Zero. What does it actually mean, and where do we stand on it on this matter as of now?
Well, Ryan, I actually just quickly called up the latest announcement on Day Zero, and I see that the city has kicked it at the 9th of July.
Okay.
And that actually means that, well, we're not making progress because we would like to push it back further.
Sure.
The average water use is still too high. It's meant to be at 450, where it's standing at 516 million litres. So it's still there. It's still a spectre, and we shouldn't forget that. Now, what does it mean? Well, I had a very stark example the other day when I arrived at the airport and went into the ladies, and there was a tourist who was clearly from another part of the world, and everywhere there were signs with saying use hand sanitizer. She went up to the tap and she opened the tap and there was no water. And she said, "There's no water." And I said, "Yes, there's a drought, and there will be no water, literally, in the taps if Day Zero don't occur." She was quite shocked. She said, "I didn't realize it was that bad." But so no water in the taps for many households, and queuing to get the daily allocation of 25 litres per person from 200 collection points
around the city.
Across the city.
Yeah, okay, sure. Quite something.
That's where we are
with
at the
Day
moment.
Zero.
It's not 3 months from now. It's still, it's close.
It's close. It's on the doorstep, and that's why we're having the show today to talk about what can be done differently. Rather than getting to Day Zero and then starting to think about it, because then it's really too late. Louise, Cape Town is currently on a 50 litres per person per day allocation, and you recently wrote a piece on how you and your family have been successfully living on this amount for some time. Tell us how you achieved this.
Yeah, I think, as was said earlier as well by Heidi and Di, this hasn't been an overnight thing that happened to Cape Town. We've been on water restrictions since last year. It's just that many people haven't taken it so seriously, and we have really tried to change habits, because that is, for a large extent, what it's about. It's actually changing personal habits, and we're achieving about 30 litres per person per day, and it's 2 of us. We have home offices, so we are at home most of the time. And it's simple things. It's not flushing the loo every time you go.
Sure.
And that's it. It's a habit that took me ages to not actually flush the toilet when I've been. For most people, it's very expensive to retrofit grey water systems. So same for us. Our house would be a nightmare. So we have bowls in all the sinks where we collect grey water. I collect the water from the washing machine. I use the shortest program with the fewest rinses. That water goes and we flush the toilets with that. Only very short showers, and every 2 or 3 days, and in between just camping washers out of buckets. You know, it's really not a big deal. It's just sometimes a little bit of an inconvenience. And thinking about not using the tap every time you need to wash your hands. Have a little bowl in the kitchen with some water and some Dettol in it, and you just
use that.
You can use that throughout the day.
Sure. Okay.
Simple things. You don't even need expensive hand sanitizers. It can just be a small amount of water with a bit of Dettol in.
Wonderful.
For cooking and washing fetch, again, a little bit of water in a bowl and using that for rinsing. Any grey water that isn't flushed down the toilet goes in the garden.
Sure.
Our Jojo tanks are actually waiting. They were delivered yesterday.
Oh, great.
Yay.
Wonderful. Good news.
So they're going to be installed in the next couple of weeks. So that would really help to further reduce our consumption.
Okay, great.
But even so, we've tried to collect as much rainwater as possible as well.
Sure. Okay. If you guys have a look at my Twitter and my Facebook feed, you'll see I've just posted the article that Louise wrote and that Louise is speaking about, together with a great little graphic showing you how the 50 can be allocated between the various activities that she's briefly touched on. Have a look and see and share that. Spread the social media loving with the helpful infographic. Di, talk to me about the Save Like a Local campaign. I really like this idea. I especially like the idea of the playlist with the 90-second songs to drive home the shower message.
Okay, Ryan. Cape Town is very creative, and once we got over ourselves and stopped moaning and blaming and shaming everybody, we went back to our normal mode and got creative. And in the beginning, a lot of people were creating playlists that were like literally to the second. So when the song finished, they knew they had to turn the showers
off.
But however, we have evolved way past that.
Okay.
Because actually, it's not about how long you're in the shower; it's about how much water you use. And so I think there's been a huge run on plastic basins and buckets and things. I have a large bowl that I stand in the shower. The first lot of water you catch, and that goes towards the kettle because that's just while you're waiting for the water to warm up. I can now have a shower and wash my hair and use less than 4 liters of water, and I feel like I've had a good shower.
Sure.
So I'm it's just a case of get wet, turn it off, soap, shampoo, do everything you need to do, wipe all the excess with a cloth, and then turn it on again to rinse. And 4 liters of water I catch, and that goes straight into my loo. I've turned off the water tap at the loo because it's too easy, like Louise was saying. It's a kind of normal reaction, you stand up and flush, so I can't do that. So you flush with spray water. But yes, people have got very, very creative. I love the playlist thing. Others have got times where you set a beep, and I know some hotels are challenging their guests to go, okay, so set it for a 1-minute shower or a 90-second shower, and the next day set it for 80 seconds, and the next day set it, try and beat your record all the time. And apparently, generally, the tourists are quite happy to take up the challenge and very interested to hear more about the crisis and how to save water, because we assume that anybody who's from Cape Town just knows, but
they don't.
It's been a very steep, fast learning curve for us, so it's lots of little ways, and we're all getting very fit carting buckets.
I can imagine. You're making me wary of coming down to Cape Town. I'm going to have to start practicing a 90-second shower. Maybe I can cheat and practice on a 2-minute shower while we've got the excess water in Joburg and wear myself down to 90 seconds by the time I come down.
No, that's not the challenge. The challenge is to get yourself a big basin and actually shower and only use 4 or 5 litres of water.
There's lots of work ahead of me. I see that.
That is the challenge, But then we've also got so for me, the most impressive have been the average person and what they've done in their home, how they've got creative. But I also must mention places like the Test Kitchen, a very, very well-known top restaurant. He has come up with a drought menu where he's creating recipes and dishes that use minimal or almost no water to cook. I think this is a brilliant idea and one that many restaurants can easily duplicate. And then, of course, there's the company Pinar and Son, who have brought out what they're calling a drought gin at 80% proof. All they've done is take their regular recipe for gin and just add 200 litres of water to this batch. So it's quite potent. I would rather just go for drinking craft beer or something.
I tell you, my head's getting dizzy just thinking about 80% alcohol, I must be honest.
Exactly. But also, it's silly little things, If you come to Cape Town and it's raining, I promise you see people outside with spray bottles washing their cars.
Okay. Yeah.
I have been known to, in a downpour, I just threw all my jeans onto the lawn and flung some soapy water on top of them. And you're kind of going, when the dust rain, use it.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing, man, is anybody that can get hold of any sort of container. It doesn't have to be a JoJo tank. I have 2,000-litre ones, but if you look at the equation of how much water you get off a roof, it's kind of a no-brainer. We should all be harvesting, because for every square metre of roof you have, you get a litre of water for every millimetre of rain that falls.
Sure. Okay.
So that adds up really fast. We had a very minor, like literally a drizzle, like was that rain, and I got 300 litres of water, which I can store and use for flushing toilets or even fill my washing machine with it.
That's nearly a whole week's ration, for one person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So so it's all about your choices and how you choose. You can have a long shower if you like, but then you better just have tinned food for supper and
lifestyle,
don't wash your dogs and don't drink a whole lot of water. But 50 litres actually does go a long way.
Doable. Okay, I'll be back shortly with my panel of guests as we start wrapping up the show. Stay tuned.
This is SoapBox Radio.
Potting it out there.
Potting it out there with My Lime Boots. The Lifestyle Edit. Share your thoughts and be part of the show now.
Send a message on Twitter or Facebook
at My Lime Boots.
Find My Lime Boots on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
At My Lime Boots. And on YouTube.
At My Lime Boots Live.
I'm chatting to Di, Louise and Heidi this afternoon, all responsible tourism champions, about the Cape Town water crisis. Heidi, tell us just briefly, what is the city of Cape Town actively doing to address this issue, if you want to just cover some of those points for us?
Well, Ryan, I think we all know about the communications that they're putting out around day zero and the pushback around that, the work that they're doing with the WWF and the water communications that are coming out from that as well. They've been talking a lot to residents, not so much to businesses, but they have one particular channel for tourism businesses that is actually quite useful in terms of solutions. What can you do to save water? And there are a couple of success stories on there as well. And that is a website called Responsible Cape Town.
Okay.
It's literally www.responsiblecapetown.co.za. It's targeting the tourist sector. It's created by the city of Cape Town, and it has information on how to communicate with guests. There are resources such as decals that guest houses can use on their mirrors. Just spreading the message of saving water and collaborating with guests. As Di rightly said, they're willing to work, but they need to work with the businesses, but they need a little bit of guidance on what can they do to help.
Sure.
So there is actually an abundance of information coming out from the city together with its aligned bodies such as Cape Town Tourism, and obviously there's also the various websites that's set up by Westgrow that consolidate some of that information that we have one point to go to. So there are solutions, but it takes individual action to make a difference.
Sure. Okay, great. Guys, we are running out of time, unfortunately, as the show always seems to feel like it runs out in 5 minutes. I want to just get the final points, like 30 seconds from each of you. Di, we'll start with you in terms of your final thoughts towards solutions, towards where to go from here as your parting message. Di?
Okay, very quickly, we've got to rethink the way we use water. Everybody needs to be measuring what task uses how much, because you can't do better if you don't know what you were using in the first place. Legislation for any new buildings going up, alterations being done. Waterless toilets are the way to go. We cannot carry on flushing precious water down the loo. Water-wise devices like storage and that must be affordable. We don't want to see people going, oh, here's a new trend and making a big fat profit out of it.
Sure. Great.
And just rethinking the way we use water. But for me, the flushing, that is the one. If we can change that system, which would be huge, it would be a massive saving going forward.
Okay.
But it's the new normal is to save water.
100%. Louise, your closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree with Di. And we need to tackle the water issue as a collective and take joint responsibility. You know, we're all responsible for this. There's no point in actually pointing fingers. We just need to save water. It's simple as that. And it's not that difficult. It's just a little bit inconvenient, but we just need to deal with it.
100%. Heidi, over to you lastly for your closing thoughts on today's topic.
Well, of course, I agree with Di and Louise, but I think the important thing is that we shouldn't relax once the rain starts. I think it must be a different way of dealing with water and a different way of doing things and everything. And also, I think people must not think that what they can do is too little compared with what their neighbour can do.
Yeah.
It takes every one of us to do what
something.
we can do with our financial resources.
Great.
So I think that's important. Do what you can.
Yeah.
As long as you save.
Wonderful.
Every drop counts.
Of course it does. Thank you very much, all three of you, for your input. I've just posted the contact details for each of our three guests on my Twitter account and my blog Facebook page. Get hold of them individually, be part of the conversation, learn from the ladies who have been actively living the lifestyle change. And that brings us to the end of a rather interesting show, and with much for us to ponder and consider. Di, Louise and Heidi, I thank you for your invaluable input into a very necessary discussion and wish you well as you continue to fight the good fight.
Thank you, Ryan. It was great being on your show.
Thank you, Ryan, for tackling this problem.
Thank you so much for your time. Guys, that was SoapBox Radio. Looking forward to being with you again next week. We have a very interesting guest on the show next week who's going to talk to us all about what he's doing in the theatre here in Joburg. So stay tuned to see who that will be with us next week. But that was SoapBox Radio, and I'm out of here.
You've been listening to SoapBox Radio.
Podding it out there with my lime boots.